Nazis are back.
All right, moving on from politics, I think we have to talk, Friedberg, about the deployment of the vaccine. I did a quick poll on Twitter, and the American people have asked that Friedberg, the Queen of Quinoa, be responsible for the vaccine distribution going forward.
Really? I'm in. Let's do it. I would
What is your
get that, I would get that vaccine into everyone's arms in 75 days. I mean, it would be locked and loaded.
You would be such a stone cold lock.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. I don't know how that happens.
Friedberg, what would you do
I would
differently?
love to do that.
And maybe you could describe, we were supposed to be at 1 million a day. We're at 350, trending towards 400. We did 1.5 million in 72 hours, according to Fauci, at one point right after the new year. So we're kind of like halfway where we need to be. What would you do differently? Because the rollout seems we have more than 50% are on the shelves still, not in arms.
It is a wartime scenario. When war is happening, you don't go home at 5 p.m. and wake up at 9 a.m. and clock out for an hour for lunch. And, you don't, don't run too fast. You might trip. You don't do any of that. We've created incredible disincentives in the system. In fact, Cuomo put out $1 million fine if you get your vaccine out of line. I mean, think about the disincentive that creates. Now people are more scared about giving the vaccine to the wrong person than they are incentivized to give the vaccine to the right person. And the reality is, this is a group game. This isn't an individual game. It's not about who gets vaccinated first and you'll live and you'll die. We all need to get vaccinated as a group, so that we all have immunity so that this virus stops spreading. It doesn't matter if you're individually vaccinated. It matters if we're all vaccinated, because that's the only way we're all going to get out of the economic slump that is truly damaging this country right now. And so the first step is create a military-style operation. Figure out how many feet on the ground. It's all a rate-based system, right? How many are you running per day? And then how do you achieve that objective? And over time, you have your target rate per day. You would scale it up over 75 days, or whatever your rollout time frame needs to be. And you would say, this is how we're going to get there. We need this number of people giving shots this many minutes apart. And then you go figure out where you're going to give the shots and who's going to give them. Get the vaccines to where they need to get to. Take over all the gymnasiums and all the stadiums and all the open sports facilities around the country. People can drive up, stand in line, get a friggin' shot. And 65-year-olds get priority for the first 30 days. And then after 30 days, your 65 and over crowd loses their priority, and it's open season for who wants to get a shot. You stand in line, you get a shot. Walk in, you got 3.8 million nurses in the United States. You go contract 500,000 of them. You give them a huge friggin' one-time bonus to come and run this program. You run 24-hour shifts in the gymnasiums around the country. People come in, they get shots, they get out. It takes 3 minutes. If you're feeling weird, if you have risk of allergies, you go sit in the other room, you wait for 2 hours, and there's a bunch of roaming nurses keep an eye on you. And you get this thing done. That's it. This is not that complicated. And we can leverage the National Guard to create the infrastructure to support these lines and get these things done. We can go recruit. There are plenty of nurses associations. You can go. People can work overnight shifts and get paid triple overtime, get extra bonuses for doing this. It's a great way to kind of create an economic stimulus around this. We can get this entire country vaccinated in 90 days. And the way that Israel's doing it is a great model. When they run out
Describe that, yeah.
So at the end of the day, if when you take these things out of deep freeze, you're at risk of them spoiling at that point, because the mRNA is very can break, and so it needs to be really cold, and then you got to give the vaccine very quickly. Otherwise, the mRNA can degrade and it's not effective. So
and you have to defrost it in order to give it.
Yes, you defrost it, then it's sitting there. Now you got to give it within a couple hours. And if you got extra doses sitting at the end of the day,
complicated.
What they're doing in Israel is they're looking outside. They grab the pizza guy that's on the bicycle cruising by. They're like, "Do you want a shot? Come on in." They give him a shot. They grab the next guy. You do not need to track everyone that gets a shot. You do not need everyone to show their ID to get a shot. You do not need to X, Y, and Z. All the disincentives that create friction in the system of rolling out the vaccine need to be completely eliminated. There's no qualifying criteria except maybe being 65 and over for the first 30 days. And we've prioritized politics over health and safety. We have made it the case that the teachers should get the shot first, because the teachers unions created an uproar in California and said they're not going to go to work unless they. So now the teachers are going to get it, and the essential workers are going to get it, which are people that are working in stores and warehouses and other stuff. And meanwhile, the people that can actually die from this, 15% likelihood of death if you're over 85, are not getting it. because they're not technically an essential worker. So the prioritization where we've tried to create these artificial, politically motivated systems for defining who gets the vaccine and who doesn't is absolutely killing us and literally killing us. 4,000 people died yesterday in the United States. And so the system is fucked up. The incentives and don't bleep that out because that's exactly what it is. The disincentives we've created are destroying the rollout. The governors getting involved and creating models of prioritization that are politically motivated are killing us. And we should centrally plan this thing. War Production Act, make a shit ton of this stuff. Grab it all. Get 100 million doses distributed into gymnasiums around the country. Get the nurses in there. Get the National Guard to organize.
This should have been federal. I mean, that's the key. This should have been a federal effort.
So central planning is sometimes needed to get shit done. We did it with the War Production Board during World War II. We did it with the Manhattan Project. There have been countless examples where we've had to centralize planning for a massive short-term event. And this is one of those events. And this needs to be prioritized and organized centrally. And it needs to have the right-minded people on this, not kind of people that are, political operatives and not people that are working 9 to 5.
Well, the good news
is this is a war, and we need to go win the fucking war.
I mean, the good news is Trump has time. He's at Camp David this weekend, so I think he can put some attention to it. Sachs.
Can I ask a question, Friedberg?
Yeah.
So, what do you think about just using markets to distribute the vaccine?
It's a great idea. I think, you have to get the incentive such that time-based systems are the incentive, right? Because the objective here is to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. So take that being your objective and then figure out, look, you guys are going to get $1,000 per person vaccinated in the first 15 days. And then you're going to get $500 and then, whatever the transition is. And then anyone can sign up to buy doses at a cost. So they have skin in the game, right? That's an alternative. So let Walgreens and CVS buy 50 million doses, and then they're incentivized to get them rolled out as quickly as possible. Let them do the work, sure. And frankly, if a few people have anaphylactic reactions across the country, that's just the reality. In war, you have some casualties. This can't be perfect. It has to be good enough to win the war.
By the way, when somebody goes into anaphylactic shock, just to clarify that,
you get
an epi shot. It's not fatal if you have an EpiPen.
That's right. And so, when you get a a vaccine, if you get one of these vaccines, 40% to 60% of people are going to have some sort of reaction. You're going to have a fever because these produce a ton of proteins in your body relative to what you would normally, kind of experience with a dead vaccine. There's a lot of vaccines in your body. There's a lot of protein in your body. Your body reacts to get rid of that protein. You produce all these antibodies very quickly. So you end up having a fever. You end up having some allergic response or headaches or flushing or whatever. So a lot of people are going to have some sort of thing. So one of the concerns is they want to have nurses available and they want to have this feel like a controlled medical environment. But again, the reality is we have to sack it up. We have to accept the fact that people are going to be uncomfortable. It is not going to be an easy, simple vaccine like you get the flu vaccine at Walgreens. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. You may not have 5 or 6 nurses surrounding you and getting all the TLC that Americans have become used to getting every time we, brush our friggin' teeth. And we're going to have some people going to anaphylactic shock, and they're going to get EpiPen shots, and we shouldn't be charging $1,500 for EpiPen shots is another important point. But I think the market-based model could work as well. So
hasn't Israel done this right? I mean, Israel, they moved the old people to the front of the line, but anybody can get in line. If they've got extra doses that day, they just keep sticking people. They keep jabbing people until they run out. All day long until they run out.
That's right. And so they're probably at 20% of the population by now.
Yeah, I'm sure we all agree with everything you're saying.
It speaks to an enormous amount of political incompetence. I mean, it's really, really just unbelievable why we just don't have smarter people in charge of these things.
But Sachs, I just want to ask you, because, there is the conservative argument on this, which is, states, the federal government shouldn't be doing everything, and states need to kind of manage their populace and manage, what goes on locally. What is the conservative, I'm not asking you this and I'm not attacking you, I'm just asking, what is the conservative argument for not doing central planning and central organization around vaccine distribution and delegating it to states? And, are there, do you think that there's a case against, for that's pretty strong within the Republican Party and within kind of conservative ranks?
I think if there's a conservative point of view on this, it would just be that let markets distribute the vaccine. They'll do a much better job. I think whether it's federal or state, the question is who's more incompetent, and I'm not really sure. I think the problem right now is that when you make vaccine distribution fundamentally political, then the debate becomes about exactly what is your position going to be exactly in line, as opposed to just running the most number of people through the process as quickly as possible. We're getting ourselves so twisted up in knots over making sure that the exact right person is in line that we're having, vaccine go to waste.
And just to put that in context, 21 million plus doses have been distributed in the United States. 5.9 have made their way into people's arms. In other words, there are 15 million, over 75% of doses have not gone in people's arms. And in California, we have distributed 5.85% of the population's vaccines, but we've only put 1.3 in people's arms. So we are literally 4x where we should be. We're at 25% of where we should be. It is absolutely unbelievable that this is happening.
And meanwhile,
if the government stopped trying to do anything except, look, it did Operation Warp Speed. That actually did help get vaccines done faster. But if
that was just money. To your point, Sachs, all they did was create a market where they basically pre-bought all the vaccines, whether or not they were going to work, and then funded the market to go and produce them early. That's all that it was. So to your point, that Operation Warp Speed, for everyone thinking it's some massive centrally controlled effort, it was a market-based incentive.
It wasn't the Manhattan Project, is what you're saying.
They put up a couple billion. Yeah,
check.
They put up a couple $2 billion and said to all these pharma companies, go produce the vaccine, and if it works, we'll buy them. If it doesn't work, throw them away. But let's get production going. And that was it.